Hello, my name's Peter Mackay. I'm Editor-in-Chief of HCB, and I'm here today to talk to James Douglas, who's CEO of Exis Technologies, part of the National Cargo Bureau. James, good to see you. This is a strange way of doing it, but I'm glad to have the opportunity. Tell us about Exis. What is Exis? What does it do?
Oh, thank you, Peter. It's good. It's good to see you as well, as you say, albeit virtually. So Exis has been in existence for nearly 35 years now. Actually, next year will be 35 years, and our business is all about helping companies safely ship dangerous goods by sea. So specifically in related to the international IMO IMDG code. And that's what we do. Our software will provide data and validation against those IMDG code rules. And over those 35 years, we've now at the point where we work with 9 of the top 10 container lines, the biggest ones in the world, along with many smaller ones. We also supply to ports, terminals, and shippers, competent authorities. But by far and away, our biggest customers are the major container lines who have kind of automated their validation process as much as they can using our tool set. And not to forget roll-on, roll-off ferry operators as well. We have, most of the major European ferry operators all use HAZCheck as well.
Mm-hmm. Where does NCB come into all this?
Yeah, so Exis was a private company established by Ken Burgess, who obviously you know very well from the past. And I got involved about 10 years ago and kind of took over from Ken because Ken was retiring. And that was a management buyout. And we were 3 years after a management buyout, no real need to sell the company or do anything like that. But one of our customers was NCB, National Cargo Bureau, and they do physical inspections of containers and ships as well. They do a lot of bulk cargo work, grain and so on in the States, but particularly their common area was dangerous goods in containers. And it just developed as a conversation that we had, what was Exis doing next and so on. And that developed to the point where it just sort of seemed to be a bit of a no-brainer. Because NCB, they're not-for-profit and they have a mission of safety of life and cargo at sea. So we thought as a management group, where would we want Exis to go next, and where would be a good home for us? Mm-hmm. And we couldn't really think of a better one. And NCB seemed to be of the same opinion. So basically, NCB have a lot of DG expertise, physical inspections, etc., and we have the IT knowledge. So it was a really good marriage, really.
Yeah. So you're saying they've got the physical expertise. I mean, what are those issues that they're dealing with in the transport of DG by sea? Yeah.
So if I start by talking about our HAZCheck, so that we our validation tool for IMDG, we're processing something like 6 million validations a month. And when we do that, the shipping line will send us the details of the cargo and the declared cargo. And we'll check whether that declaration meets the rules. But the problem is that that's only as good as effectively what's entered in the system from a piece of paper. So, it's not. Unfortunately, some people either don't declare it because they don't know any better or it's fraud, and other people will declare it, but they might declare it as particular cargo, but when you open up the box, there could be something completely different in it. So, so our validation helps the industry, but actually, unless you physically open every container and look at it, you're never going to be sure for what's in the box, so to speak. So what they do is they do physical inspections on behalf of container lines. They also work for US Customs as well, and we've got a database now that we built for them And in that database is almost 200,000 records now of physical inspections. And some of those pass, some of them fail, and we've got the reasons for that. So that's what they're doing, and trying to ramp up that level. We're never going to be inspecting every container, obviously, because that would slow the supply chain down. But a more, let's say, targeted rather than random approach is what we'd be looking to do.
You mentioned the name HasCheck then. What we've seen lately, I think this, remind me, was this as part of NCB's white paper on container, dangerous goods in containers and fires and so on, that you've introduced HasCheck Detect?
Yeah, it was a certain parallel process around them. I mean, the white paper itself, a holistic approach to dangerous goods, was produced by NCB kind of in parallel, because there's a lot of other things there as well that need to be in place, not just IT solutions. And the Detect thing, I mean, there's a certain, I don't know, serendipity about the whole thing, because NCB, actually 28th of April, it'll be 3 years since we were acquired by NCB. And, just at the same time was the terrible incident, the Maersk Oman, pretty much happened more or less within days of our transaction being acquired by NCB. So, maybe was kind of luck in a way, but I look upon it more as it was meant to happen. I don't mean the incident, sorry. I mean us coming together.
Yeah.
So because we'd come together and because we had their knowledge, our tool set, that was the spur really that led to building HasCheck Detect, which is for screening and looking for misdeclared and undeclared. And, to be fair, Maersk Line, who are the first customer of the product, they very much drove that because they had that incident, and they were very determined that would never happen again.
I know some of the other lines as well have been working on a similar system. I think Hapag-Lloyd were the first out of the box with one, weren't they? Is it important that system is aligned across industry, you think, or is it okay for the lines to have their own approach?
Yeah, no, fundamental that it needs to be aligned, and that's actually, again, why we got involved. So we were actually approached, as I say, about 2.5 years ago by not just Maersk, but four other lines as well, to try and produce a solution for the industry, a common solution. And it was really on that basis that we sort of went ahead. We didn't want to produce something that, just for one company. If we were going to produce something that could be used by the industry, then number one, it fitted NCB and our sales, our mission, and the timing was good. Number two, all of these people are our customers anyway because they're using our validation tool. So it just was the right way to go. So that's why we got into it. And a fundamental design criteria of it was that it had to be all inclusive. And what I mean by that is the elements to the screening solution are some software that actually searches through the cargo descriptions and various other parts of the bill of lading. But it's also the setup and management of rules and keywords. So what we've done is we've designed the screening so that it can be totally integrated with each container line. But we've also designed the management of the rules and keywords so that if somebody has their own solution, as you mentioned, Hapag-Lloyd have had a solution, Zim also have their own solution. But in those cases, even though they're doing their own screening, we still have the ability to share common keywords and rules across the platforms. So we've designed it to be industry in both those senses, that if somebody can't use our screening, they can still use the shared keywords. And that's fundamental, otherwise it won't work. because, as you know, if Maersk take a booking, they're in a vessel sharing agreement with MSC. So even they reject that booking, let's say, because they detect it. But that person could go off and try and book it with MSC. I'm not saying MSC have a bad system, but let's say it got accepted, then it could end up back on the Maersk vessel anyway, which defeats the system.
Yes, yeah. So what sort of, are you finding common issues with the use of this? Are the same sort of cheats being applied across industry?
Yeah, I think it's a learning process. You have to get to a common point. There's a lot of work on those rules. I've had in the last couple of months we've had shared rules and keywords from 2 or 3 other lines, as well as the work we're doing with Maersk. And in each case, they've probably got about 4,000 terms, different search terms. And in each case, I would say probably 50% of them are common. And then there's another set of terms. And some of that can vary also on trade lanes and different markets that they're in. So I would say at this stage, what we're doing is not necessarily finding other things. What we're doing is we're more at the point still of fine-tuning it. And what I mean by that is, if you say you search for carbon or cotton as an example, very simple example. In the case of cotton, if you just search for cotton, you might find cotton shirts or something, which is not very interesting. So what we're really focused on at the minute is more fine-tuning it. And that means, filtering out things that aren't interesting. And we've got various ways of doing that. So that's what we're doing. We're also making a lot of the current solutions just look at cargo description, whereas what we can do with our rules is look across different terms. So it might be searching cargo description, but also in the origin of the cargo or other factors. So things like that allow us to fine tune. And then the major thing that is new in what we're doing is I would say it's real time. If you spoke to Maersk, and they're happy for me to say this is the real USP. Not so much that we find different stuff yet, but what we're doing is we can do it quickly. And the reason for that is they can sort of ping us the information and they get a response within seconds. So if a shipper or someone makes a change to a booking or sends in declaration at the last minute or bill of lading of shipper instructions, they can get a response quickly enough to stop that container loading on the vessel. And that is the USP. They don't want the cargo to get on the vessel. A lot of other solutions, more manual, they will find these things anyway, but they might find them a week later. Or
when the ship's already gone.
It's on the ship. So that's what we focused on really at the beginning, and that they're very happy with that. And we're doing 13 million transactions a month at the minute. That's what we screen. That's the number of hits. On average, they're looking at through about 500 hits a day, and they would say they're stopping around about 40 or 50 containers a week from loading that would otherwise have loaded.
Right.
Other things going on those other hits, they'll go back to the shipper and say, "Are you sure about this?" And in a lot of occasions, that gets corrected and can just be a mistake, or they didn't know any better, that sort of thing.
Well, I know the IMDG is quite complicated. It's not the easiest, especially for non-specialists. But this seems to suggest you're generating an awful lot of information about what's going on in the supply chain. Can that information be leveraged? Obviously, there's GDPR considerations, I suppose, but can it be used for the greater good?
Yeah, so this has exercised our minds quite a lot. Myself together with the other directors in NCB group. Again in the context of our mission, And so I think there's two parts to that. You're right. I mean, as I said, we're doing 13 million screenings a month. That's going to shoot up because you asked about there's some other carriers looking to do the screening. Validations, we're doing 6 million a month. So that's the declared dangerous goods. And then we've got the cargo inspection data that NCB have, where we've got about a couple of 100,000 at the minute. There's two aspects to this, I think. One is, and you would know this, if you go and ask somebody how many dangerous goods containers are shipped per annum, everybody sort of has a guess, don't they?
Yeah.
Or an educated guess. But, so what we want to do is to be able to become a source, definitive source of that type of information. And, a bit more than just how many are shipped. Perhaps we can go a bit more detail. So that's our, for the greater good, as you say. But more importantly, possibly, we can also use this data to apply. Now, I actually originally had a computer science degree, believe it or not, many moons ago. So I actually kind of got involved with Exis more because I was a computing person than a container person. But I'd like to think I've learned a bit. But so this bit really fascinates me. People talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence, and I've kind of almost, rolled my eyes at that a little bit over the years because what actually is it? But actually, I'm now convinced this is right because so with this set of data that I've just described, we can do a lot of things with this, particularly this machine learning, and I've learned a lot about it recently. And what we can do is that if I use an example, let's say, and if we put all that data into a big pot, you can apply machine learning techniques to it. You have to clean up the data as well. But and what we could do, for instance, is we could try and create a model that predicts the type of container that might have failed an inspection, for instance. And okay, we've got 200,000 bits of inspection data, but actually, if you develop that model and then apply it to 13 million screening sets of data, then you might be able to more target inspections, for instance. And then the same thing applies to the actual screening itself. If we analyze what's happening and train the model, then you can improve your screening process as well. So it's really exciting, actually. I mean, you mentioned it. I'm maybe prior to the call we talked about retirement, and I think if anything kept me going, kept me interested. This really does, because I really think this can make a difference.
I have to say, I haven't seen many major container ship fires over the last 6 months. Anyway, not since you got this going. I don't know if that's just coincidence or.
I don't. No, I don't think. I think they're still there. I don't. We also supply the database behind the SINS, the Cargo Incident Notification System. It's not our database; it belongs to SINS, but we support it. And there's certainly still cargo fires, information getting entered in there in a regular. I mean, it's not a disastrous situation like the Merciful Man, thank goodness, but there are, smoking containers, fires in containers still happening. Yeah.
Okay. So you were saying that is this giving you an idea of where Exis and NCB are going to be going in the next decade, next 3 decades even?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need to continue to, as I said, 35 years. I mean, I think, what's going to happen in the next 30 years or so, and it maybe that was less clear 3 years ago before we were involved with NCB, but I think now being part of our mission being safety of life and cargo at sea, it's very clear we need to continue doing a good job of what we do in validation. you know, when I joined Exis, we didn't have 9 of the top 10 carriers doing validation, and we certainly didn't have it automated or semi-automated. So I'd like to think in 30 years' time, we can have as many of those big carriers using the screening solution. So we have an industry solution, hopefully before 30 years actually, but certainly if you look back at that time. And those who can't are sharing common keywords. And, you know, as per that last point, we're able to provide a data service to the industry. And, you know, we have a sophisticated machine learning tool running with the data. And it, you know, it's kind of only clicked really in the last year that, you know, everything, a lot of the world goes round now using data, doesn't it? And, you know, a lot of the best applications, you know, built on analyzing data. So really, it's not before time that certainly in the DG world, in container shipping, we're in a unique position to be able to make a difference there. So I think that's very firmly what the next 30 years is. Hopefully I'll be able to look back on it then. Maybe.
I hope so too, James, and I hope the next time we have this conversation, we'll be able to do it in person, because I think one of us owes the other one a beer by now.
Definitely. Yeah, that would be nice. That would be very nice.
I look forward to it. But for now, James, thank you very much, and good luck with using this system going forward.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.